Well, hello, everybody, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome. My name is Nick Harauz. I am the Director of Marketing at Continuum here. And we're going to take a look at a few collaborative workflows, both inside of Continuum as well as inside of Sapphire. So, hopefully, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope everyone's getting excited for the holidays. I know I am. And when I talk about collaboration, you can take it in a number of ways depending on your type of workflow. But specifically, I mean the ability to share data from one application to another. So we're going to take a look at that inside of Continuum, of how we can use the effects editor. We'll also look at how Mocha masking is integrated in both Continuum and Sapphire workflows. We'll look at a special effect inside of Sapphire called Color Fuse and what we can do with lookup tables and LUTs and saving them in very unique ways, followed by what I consider to be one of the ultimate ways of collaboration, and that's defining someone's effects experience by using S-Effect and building your own effects, and then also deciding the amount of control that you want to give a user. So, like always, there's a lot of information to cover here at office hours. I can't wait to dive in. If you guys have any questions, I will be paying attention to the comments that I have here on a separate screen. So please say hello, or if you need any more information, I will point you in the right direction. Now, without further ado, let me start to share my screen. And we're going to start our journey here inside of Premiere Pro, although I will be jumping between the various applications. And the first thing I'm going to do is throw an effect on this shot that we see here. So like I usually do with my workflows, I'll press Shift 5 to go into my effect controls, Shift 7. I'll do a search for BCC Plus. This is just a great way to isolate all of the GPU accelerated filters that exist inside of Continuum. And right now, I'm going to head my way to the film style category and towards one of the effects that we've actually added a few properties to inside of Continuum 2023. So I'm going to just drag that here onto this clip. We can see an initial glow on the shot. I'll press Shift 5 now to go to effect controls. And usually with any effect in Continuum, I like to kind of get an idea of what is possible with it. So for that, let me head inside of the effects editor. We'll see a ton of presets over here to the side. I'll just click on a few of them so you can see the effect that it has on my footage. But a great new feature that was added specifically in the effects editor is at the top here, we've added a category specifically for new effects. And it's here you'll find some presets specifically that have the secondary glow option that's now been added inside of Film Glow. So if I look to the parameters on the right-hand side and start to scroll down, there's an option here for a secondary glow that we can enable that will allow you to have additional radius controls on that secondary glow. Right now it's red in color, but happens to be wider in the x-axis. Not to mention we have its independent intensity, but if we wanted the primary glow's intensity to control this secondary glow, I can always link that as well. So right now, this glow that I'm playing with, and while I dial the intensity, we can see both glows acting together or linked. This could make these tweaks that I make a useful preset. So just before I save this out, I'm going to change the glow color in this instance of the primary glow to a yellow. Also decrease the threshold. And whether you start with a preset or the default parameters of Film Glow, the process of saving a preset is the same. That's going to be inside your parameters. There's a little button here for Create Custom Preset. And this is where our collaboration can take a number of different, can go a number of different routes. One is that once I save this preset, if someone is working inside of Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve or Avid Media Composer, and they have Continuum 2023 that they're working with, I can send them this preset that they can work with. It doesn't have to be sent with a project or through XML, through an XML project, so to speak, or sequence that you send. Here, I'll call this secondary glow. And I can add some tags or characteristics which will link up to the categories that we saw earlier and even add a description. So I'll call this My Fave Glow. And once I choose OK, that new secondary glow is added into the presets, specifically to the new category because of that tag. And if you're looking to see where it exists on your system, inside the effects editor, we can right click and choose to open the custom preset location. This is going to spit us out to the folder where this is saved in just a second. It looks like I've got a little spinning wheel here as it starts to think about that preset location. But all of the presets are going to be stored in this location, and they actually happen to be lightweight XML files that you can then take and drag and share with another person. You'll also notice that we can, of course, rename a custom preset. And as long as they're stored in these locations, we have access to them. Since I have a little bit of problems here with opening the custom preset location, I'm just going to force quit my effects editor right now and head inside of Final Cut Pro, where I happen to have, once I end up there, this same project loaded, which will draw the point here with the film glow. So with this project selected, I'll actually apply film glow from here inside my film style category. Let me just choose film glow. We can see it's applied. And if I head into the effects editor within Final Cut, we should be able to see that we would have access to the new preset. And in the instances, we could also see the custom preset location that's available to us as well. So that's one great, I would say, collaborative workflow, is your ability to save these presets and have them be saved cross-platform, not to mention work inside of the effects editor to build your preset experience. Now, inside of Continuum, this can go in a different direction as well. With effects and presets, not only can you save a custom preset from any effect that you have, but you can also save a preset or a project with Mocha data. And that Mocha data can be transferable to other effects inside of Continuum, or could also travel cross-platform for you as well. So just to demonstrate this example, I'm going to head to After Effects here, where I have a project loaded up of a deer. And someone spent a lot of time isolating this deer so that we could have a cutout of them and then essentially have an effect or basically create an effect behind them through isolation. Just to demonstrate this, let me choose an effect here called Atmospheric Glow. I'll do a search for that under Film Style. I'll apply that to the clip. And just like before, we could head to the effects editor where we could choose a number of presets to start from. There are so many various looks that you can get from this effect. So you can check out my previous office hours that goes to this in more detail. But for now, I'll choose the Glamorize effect. I'll apply that onto my shot. Now, right now, Atmospheric Glow is affecting the entire shot, but I can then use either Pixel Chooser or Mocha masking in order to isolate the deer and make sure that the glow doesn't appear on the deer. Now, I've already done this project, and in fact, I'm going to load the project data in order to show you this example. So inside of Mocha, when I launch Mocha Continuum, and I go to the File menu, right now I can choose Open Project, where on my system, here is a Mocha project with all of the masking and tracking already performed. So let me choose Open. Automatically, we start to see the different types of masks that were drawn and tracked. This is broken down into a series of planes in order to perform the track. And if we wanted to take a look at this project, this is all stored within a folder. And then to the left of the folder is a plus icon, which would then allow us to select each of the individual X splines that were drawn in this case. Some of the X splines, if you take a quick look to them, such as this background hind leg top that's selected, were actually linked to other splines in order to simplify the masking process that you see here. But the great part about this entire thing, again, is that I was able to load a Mocha mask that could have been drawn or created in Sapphire, in Continuum, in Mocha Pro, and then I'm going to use this data in order to isolate that effect to a specific region of my image. So this allows for not only cross-platform workflows, but also for you to share this Mocha data between Continuum and Sapphire, which could be very useful for certain workflows. Let me close down Mocha in this instance. I'm just going to choose Save. And what we should see is that the effect is isolated to the deer, and what we want is the reverse. All I have to do, and the workflow is very similar if you are inside of Sapphire as well, there'll be a section close to the top of the effect for your Mocha data. And we can see here that we can view that matte mask that was created inside of my Mocha mask, right? That was all transferred over here. But we have the opposite result to what we want. So in this case, I'll twirl down the matte. I'll twirl down the mask properties for Mocha, the mask properties, and then choose invert mask. So now the effect is on the outside of the mask. I'll just increase the feather so it's less harsh. But there we were able to take Mocha data in where it was created separately by going into Mocha mask and then opening the project. From that, bringing it back into the Continuum effect, and under the mask settings, changing it to be an invert mask, not to mention adding a feather here. Just to show this same data being interpreted inside of another application, I'm going to hop into Final Cut Pro. I just so happen to have this exact same clip loaded here. And for demonstration purposes, under Film Style, let's apply the BCC Plus Film Stocks effect. Same workflow is here where we can, first of all, let's choose an effect by using the effects editor. I'll go inside of here. And let's say that we want a cool black and white look. We can choose the cool 35 look or one of these copper looks. And when you get into color correction, just in general with Continuum, whether you're using film stocks or you're going to be using looks, which actually happens to be free for Final Cut, we can do comparison modes in here. So here's an A-B comparison of the original clip next to the black and white clip. We can have a slider between those two images. Not to mention we could take our own snapshot, so we could have a comparison of 3 states of our shot at once in compare mode. I'll apply this. We can see the black and white effect. And just like we did inside of, I showed inside of After Effects, I'll head here and click on Mocha Mask. Mocha launches inside of Final Cut. And similar to After Effects, I'll go File, Open Project. And here's that .mocha project, the same splines, the same roto of the deer, now accessible in a different application and on a different effect. We'll have a similar result where if I close this window and save this, we'll now see that the deer is only black and white. But if we twirl down our pixel chooser options here and go into our mask properties, I can invert that mask so that the background is black and white and also increase the feather. Now, if you yourself are creating this Mocha project, if you're creating the Mocha mask and you're tracking it, when we head into Mocha, once I click that Mocha mask button again, if you're looking to save out this project so it is transferable, your option would be available from the File menu before closing. You would want to save a project or export a project to a location where you can access it inside of another application. So this is the key here to having that cross-platform workflow or even sharing it between effects. I'll close out Mocha, and we're going to head back inside of Premiere, where I happen to have a clip that I would like to color correct. And sometimes in my workflows within Premiere, I will use the Lumetri color panel to do a base correction, and then a number of options to do stylistic corrections and effects. With the Lumetri color panel here at the side, let's do a base correction, and we can actually do this rather simply in the basic correction section, where I'll do an auto correction right now, which has the clip's blacks levels, whites, as well as its exposure have been lifted in order to make this shot pop a little bit more. You can always see the before and after inside of Premiere with this effect by clicking on and off that basic correction. Now, I'd like to add to this correction, and every once in a while I will use LUTs into my workflow. Within the Lumetri color panel, there are two sections of where you can import LUTs, but in the cases of that you would like to apply several LUTs or lookup tables to a clip, you'd have to use multiple versions of the Lumetri color effect in order to achieve the final example. And this is where Color Fuse from Sapphire can provide a pretty awesome workflow when you want to add style on top of your shots here. So just to show, I'm going to go to the Effects tab. The previous two examples that I showed, we were looking at Continuum. Now we're hopping into Sapphire. I'll do a search under here for S color in order to isolate the color fuse effects that you can find in the stylized category. And when we apply that effect, let's just take a look at the chain that we have in effect controls. We've applied just a base color correction for Lumetri color. And just on top of that, we should see Color Fuse has now added a bit of a stylistic adjustment on top of our basic Lumetri color. So here's S Color Fuse. Now this effect is made of 3 LUT or lookup tables that we can add to this effect and blend together using various lookup table strengths. What we get by default is just one lookup table that has been applied to this clip. We can see it under our LUT options here. So here's LUT 1 strength. It's actually a Fuji Provia LUT that we're currently using. And we can choose to load additional lookup tables right here inside of effect controls. Or, like we saw with Continuum drawing a parallel in the effects editor, Sapphire has its own section where we can actually apply presets by simply loading a preset. So the preset browser is now starting. And specifically with Color Fuse, these presets have been divided into a series of categories. Black and white will stand for your black and white looks. Color will basically be your color stock. You can see many of them are named after various color stocks. I'm going to scroll down here to the very bottom where we can see actually stylistic LUTs or lookup tables. And last, which I think is the most interesting, is the presets that start with the word M, which means mix. So with the first 3 categories that I mentioned, if you select, say, the black and white soft, if we look at Ben Brownlee's description here under author, this is just based off of a single LUT, this lookup table preset that you have available to you. Same thing is going to be true for what starts with C, and same thing is going to be true with what starts with S. But if I click on M color pop, you'll notice that this is actually a mixture of LUTs or lookup tables. It will tell you what it might work ideally in, what type of clip, so saturated fun that pops, and what type of TV commercial or content that you're cutting. Once I load this into Premiere Pro, we should see 2 lookup tables that have been used to design this look. We've got the Kodachrome preset and a vintage Psionic. You'll see first of all your color look, which starts with a C, a color filter, and then also a stylistic one here with vintage. They also have different mix strengths that you can dial up and down, 1 being your strongest, 0 being no effect at all, so that these lookup tables mix together. Now, usually in a lookup table workflow, you would primarily do a base color correction, followed by adding on your style on top, getting that vintage film stock look, followed by additional style, maybe warming up the shot or cooling it as well. There is no reason, what I think makes color fuse so great for a workflow, whether you're here inside of Premiere or After Effects or DaVinci Resolve, is the fact that when you save a preset, you can store up to 3 lookup tables at once, and that's going to travel along with that preset. I think this is just fantastic. Inside of Premiere Pro, if you'd like, you can actually create and export out your own LUTs and then reference them as part of Color Fuse, saving that as a preset so that transfers over into another application. So if I go back to these base corrections that we just made on the Lumetri color, right, just a simple auto color adjustment that I made in the basic correction at the beginning. If we look at the Lumetri panel and we click on these 3 lines here at the top, you'll notice options where we can export a .look file or export a .cube file. I'm going to export a .cube because I know this is going to be read by Color Fuse. I'll call it auto correction. And keep in mind, this could be just a basic black and white adjustment to boost contrast in a certain type of footage that you have and are going to be applying these corrections to. And I'm going to choose Save Now for that cube LUT. I'll deactivate the Lumetri color effect within Effect Controls. And here, just if I enable S-Color Fuse, you should see that we can, of course, choose a LUT. And by default, it's going to bring us to where all the preset lookup tables that ship with Sapphire are stored on your system. Of course, you can see that file path right here on my Mac. This is going to vary if you're on a PC computer. That's not preventing us, though, from going to another section. I'll go to the desktop. And there's that auto correction that I just made and just stored here during office hours. And now this lookup table is inside of Color Fuse that we can then save. To get the same look, of course, I would have to change the pipeline in this instance. I would come in here and choose another lookup table to reference under lookup table 2 and lookup table 3, and then save that effect out. But the great part is we can build our own base adjustments along with stylistic looks and use that inside of Color Fuse, which I think is a really cool way to work with LUTs or lookup tables and collaborate with others when it comes to color correction. So besides that, we have those choose LUT presets that we just saw. And depending on where you're working, you also have options of controlling the host as well as LUT color space here, choosing from another number of options depending on your workflow requirements. Okay. I'm going to hop inside of After Effects, and inside of Sapphire, we're now going to take a look at what I think to be the ultimate collaboration tool and builder. In fact, it has access to something called Builder, and we're going to get to that here in a second. But first of all, with Sapphire and one very special effect called S-Effect, we can define someone's effect experience. If you have any experience creating an After Effects project or using the Essential Graphics panel, you may be familiar with building out a text template with animated properties, and then you choose which options to give your user inside of Premiere Pro, what they can control. In fact, several After Effects templates that you could download from Adobe Stock, all of these have been curated by motion graphic designers who will give the user in Premiere a certain amount of control. The same thing exists in Sapphire when it comes to VFX and motion graphics. We can basically define that user experience. And one way to first of all see this is to add one effect called S effect. So I'll type in S underscore effect right now. And we'll go to inside the Sapphire Builder category. We'll find it. And I'll apply it to a solid here inside my After Effects project in a composition. First thing, like we've done with some of the other effects that we've applied, I'm going to load a preset. One thing is very different compared to the other presets that we've searched for. In every instance so far, we've searched for effects only associated with that effect. Where Builder, in particular, if I go to the Effects tab, will allow you to search for any preset in any of these effects. So, for instance, that you're curious to see what the effects are in S underscore glow or S underscore ultra glow, we can double click that category and see all of the presets that were created for it. But it gets even better. And where we can see this is in something called Builder effects. Builder effects are combinations of Sapphire effects, and they give you an end result. We can see here some of these are backgrounds that we might want to use or use as foreground overlays that we can preview here inside of Builder. In other instances, they are simply meant to be applied over top of footage as well. Inside of Builder, we can control what we have or how we're viewing the source. But in this instance, I'm going to go and click on Alien Planet, as that's the effect that we're going to want to bring inside of After Effects. So I'm just going to wait 1 second for it to update. I think because I have 3 or 4 different apps, the little spinning beach ball is causing me a little bit of anxiety, but I think we're good now. We can see that image. So here's that Alien Planet. And I just want to show you guys how this was constructed. So for that, let's load it. We'll head back into After Effects where we can see all of this taking place. Now it's applied on top of our solid. And most interesting when it comes to effect controls is just how simplified the properties that we're looking at here. If I actually zoom in onto this section, we'll see that we have an option for editing the glare that's within the shot, the lunar color phase, which comes from an effect called S Luna, and the colors associated with not only the alien planet, the moon in this instance, that was just stylized, but also the lens flare. And it's this simplified control and experience that we can create using S Effect. To break down how this was built, what we can do is go into Edit Effect. Once I do, I want to enter into Sapphire's Effect Builder. I'll just make this full screen so we can take a look at it. And we see a pipeline here in the middle, which represents how this effect was indeed put together. What building blocks we used to create this effect. So first of all, we have Starry Sky, which actually happens to come from an effect called S Night Sky. Here are all of the properties associated with that effect. But the person who created this, John Dickinson, in this case, only gave a user control over the glare, which has this check mark here. Not to mention, I think that might be the only parameter in this case with that effect. We're going to see something similar with the other two effects here in the pipeline, both the alien planet, which happens to be S Luna. So if I select that, and then lens flare. So with alien planet, just notice that one of the only parameters here at the side that happens to have a check mark next to it is color. And then we're going to see something similar with lens flare. It's going to correspond with the only a parameter that we saw inside of After Effects. So let me just cancel out of here. I'm going to try to build the structure of an effect on a different clip. But now that we have an idea how this effect using 3 Sapphire effects was created, this builder effect, we can go ahead and use S-Effect to create our owns using pretty much the entire collection of Sapphire effects. So let me head over here to a new composition. I've already isolated S-Effect just to see if I can get a little bit more processing power. I'm going to close down a few of the applications that I've been working in previously. And by default, when you apply S-Effect to a shot or a source, you'll notice that you don't see anything by default. That's going to change right away when you choose to load a preset, or right from the scratch if we decided to go here and edit an effect. Now I'm inside of Sapphire Builder, and I want to draw your attention to the left-hand side, which will show you all the components / effects that you can use to build this effect experience and collaborate with other video editors or motion graphic designers. So just like we have access inside of After Effects or Premiere Pro by using the Effects tab for all of Sapphire's effects, you're going to see something very similar here within the component section, almost every single effect from Sapphire's library. I'm going to search for something new. In this case, I'm going to go for Prism, and we'll find the new Prism Lens effect. And one way that we can add it down here to our workspace, to our pipeline, is to double click the effect. We can see there that it's added automatically to the pipeline. The other option would be just to simply drag and drop it in this section down here as well. So I just undid what I did with the simple Command Z tool, but I'll apply it to the source, and we can see here Prism Lens has been added. With this effect selected down here in the workspace, you can see that it lights up, and we have access to all of its properties here at the side. Not to mention we can just take advantage of a preset right now. So we have access to the preset browser, and specifically searching the effects that we added, the presets associated with that. So maybe I'd like to apply this corner radial look. I can load that, and now those properties are all adjusted for this specific look. So this mode that I'm currently using is actually known as Prism Lens Radial. We're seeing the results, but we have options for how we see this effect. And then we can start to play with the look of the shape of the prism right now, not to mention its position. And then the details of the actual reflection. So in this case, I want to lower the opacity a bit here for the reflection. I can play with the position of the reflections. Can even tilt this for some interesting prismatic looks. And the list goes on and on with the parameters. In some pipelines, though, you might not want to give your user this amount of control. So let me, first of all, reset this effect. And I'll change it from its default, the prism lens, from single over here to radial again. So we are off here to a fresh start. The geometric shape that's currently being used for the reflection is a polygon, but I'll change that to an ellipse. And you might have seen the changes of this shape adjusting right now. And then we can also adjust its sides and how large this is. I'll increase the radial copies that have been produced. And in order to change the position, we can change the total angle, the start angle, not to mention the row offset, which I want to use to have the circles in this instance not overlap with the main image. There are a few other options here for the overall position of these two, which we can play with in order to develop a look for our prism. Now, when you think about the amount of parameters that I just played with in this short period of time, I would say I touched about 5 to 7, but a lot of them won't be necessarily useful for me all the time when I'm inside of After Effects or Premiere Pro. Not to mention, I might want to just limit the amount of control that I give someone else who's adjusting this effect or this look. One really handy option that we have at the top of any effect that we add inside of Builder is this checkbox at the very top right, which allows us to turn off all of the parameters here, all of the checkboxes. Essentially what I've done is told Builder to not allow any of these effects to show up inside of After Effects or Premiere Pro. Right now, if I pressed OK to go back, we're going to see a very light effect, S effect here, because none of the parameters or properties are going to show up in the host. So I'll just give it a second. We're here inside of S effect, and I want you to see that the one S prism lens that we added, no properties are showing. Let's go back in and edit the effect. If I turned on that top checkbox, once we see the parameters of when I select prism lens, we can now decide what we'd like the user to see. This might involve the position, the number of sides, the size, the softness, and let's add a few here for the number of rows. I'll actually adjust this to 2 with the slider, the row distance, and the offset and the fade. So only what's checked specifically under Prism Lens is what's going to show inside of After Effects. We can take this one step further by renaming S Prism Lens to something else that might be more meaningful for the person that you're collaborating with. So maybe this is Prism. And now only these properties are going to show up. Let's add one more effect just to see how this is going to all come together. I'll do a search in my components here for Ultra Glow. We'll just add an overall glow on top of the effect. Then just to mention, if we start to look at some of the properties here of Prism Lens, you do have certain glow controls. So we could take advantage of that. Or we could add a Supreme Glow, which has some different controls that we could also take advantage of with Ultra Glow. So the options in the sky is the limit. So I'll just apply Ultra Glow in this case. It's way too strong, the effect. So I will increase the threshold and the brightness. And let me change the color to have a bit of a yellow hue. Considering that I think that these are the only 3 properties that another editor is going to play with, what I'll do is deselect all of the effects that are currently showing here. And let's just activate brightness, color, and threshold. All right, that's looking great. And I'll give this the name Glow. Okay. And again, now we can see some of the various additional controls such as afterglow and edges, atmosphere, and highlights that we could also take advantage of and give access to properties of. But when we start to take a look at this effect, and we go back into After Effects, we now have a much more controlled experience. We have one effect, a prism, with only a handful of properties, and the same thing is true of Glow. And all of this hard work that you did here inside of After Effects or whatever host you're using S Effect in is going to be transferable for you if you share this preset with someone else. And in fact, that's what I'll do in this case. So now that we've built this effect, let's just see some of that work carried on over. We've got Prism Lens, which is now named Prism, and the properties that I added, side, size, and row, and then Glow with just the simple brightness, color, and threshold. I'll click Save Preset. This is accessible in a few different areas, but this is going to allow this effect preset to be transferable. In order to keep track of it, I'll mark it as a favorite right away by clicking on this star icon on the bottom left-hand corner. And let's just give this an effect name, Prism lens with ultra. I'll put my name next to it. And then I can start to add a description, a meta description here, which is going to allow the user to know what they can adjust in terms of the properties or parameters, along with available characteristics, which would make it easier to search for the preset that you've created. So putting some time into giving your effects name, whether this is inside of Sapphire and using S-Effect, or any of the effects in particular, or using Continuum, can go a long way to make it more accessible to other users. So what could be some of the available characteristics that I might want associated with it? Glowing definitely comes to mind. I'll mention lighting or light leak. Scroll down, saturated, and maybe a few others like warm. So it makes it easier to find these preset characteristics and find this effect. And now once I click save, this is now a saved effect that is available for me to share with others cross-platform. Just to show this, by editing the effect again, let me actually cancel out of here. What I meant to do was go to the top and load a preset. And where we've been searching for builder effects previously, I'll go to favorites, as I know I've marked this as a favorite, and we can now see that prism lens with ultra created here, not to mention with a star. Accessible for me to access, and then of course, load. If I go back to the save preset dialog box, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention, and that's this little folder here, which is where your presets are currently being stored. That's something that you're going to want to take note of wherever that is on your system. That's your gateway, as in you're going to allow people to be able to find where your presets are stored there, not to mention share that with others so that they can load that inside of Sapphire. I'm going to cancel out of here. Cool. So this is just one of several things that you can do with S-Effect. And I think that there's another part to that that is worth mentioning in your effect or preset that I think you should save. So we've seen with S-Effect that we can stack multiple components together, multiple Sapphire effects, then choose which properties we bring over into the host application. Another layer to this, if we go back to edit effect, is how we could actually create auto animations in some cases. When I earlier showed some of the builder presets, which we were exploring, you may take note that some of them had movement to them. And this wasn't done with keyframes, but in fact, graphs. To demonstrate this, I'll go back to the alien planet, which happens to be the S_Luna effect. And if you haven't played with this effect before, if we go here and load a preset, there are several variations of a highly realistic moon that you can take advantage of, also mixed with a glow and some atmospheric effects combined with that. If I cancel out of here, one thing that is creating the dark shadow on the moon happens to be its lunar phase. If I take this phase, which is a property available to me inside of After Effects for adjusting, if I scrub this value, you can see here that it's going to cycle through the moon. So maybe what we want to do is control it so that this lunar phase starts at the value that it was originally at in the preset, which is about 46, and have that over time ramp up to make a full reveal. How we can take advantage of that is by clicking on this little graph icon. And this allows for a series of animations or auto animations that you can take advantage of and share. Some of these right away, if I just play with this ramp over the length or duration of that shot, we should see that it's going to go through the various lunar phases, these values that show here. So it's going to look a little bit differently when I move in time over that lunar phase. We can take advantage of various graphs here, various graph presets. But keep in mind that we can also create our own based on values. So we can construct where this graph comes in, not to mention when we start the animation with the with the actual start time. So maybe we don't want to ramp up until a little bit later. And maybe we want to end earlier. That's the mid time. So let me grab the actual end time here. We could only have an animation for a portion of this graph, and then we can play with those values of where they are plotted, of how it goes in and out. So this is something that we could take advantage of. And in fact, let me just go back to the lunar phase, where we'll do a simple backwards ramp in this case, just to show it's cycling between that phase. And once I choose OK, inside of After Effects, we'll see that we have some auto animation. This can be great for glows or a number of different stylistic effects, distortion effects that are available to you. Now back here inside of After Effects, if I play, although this is a big project, let me just move forward, as we should be able to see the adjustment here of the lunar phase over time. I might have pressed cancel in that case, but yeah, I do see a little bit of an animation here. I might just not have chosen the right properties / parameters in that case. Another thing we can do is if I headed back into edit the effects, by adjusting the base value, which you could do in the host as well, for the lunar phase, i.e. set it to 360, that's going to have a huge effect on the animation because it will start at that value and then slowly ramp up over time. Let me just divide that into half, maybe to -180. Or we can see there it goes through a full cycle and I get the animation that I'm looking for. So I'll press OK. We'll now see that update inside of After Effects or Premiere Pro, wherever we're using Sapphire. And we can save that as a preset, and that animation is going to carry along for the ride, again, without the need to keyframe. And I think in any type of workflow, whether it be motion graphics or video editing, this could be a really great part of saving data and collaborating amongst your peers. So we covered quite a bit of information here when it came to both collaborating inside of Continuum and Sapphire that I think we should take stock at. And I just wanted to give a little bit of a recap of some of the things that we've covered, and then also open up the floor to potentially any questions from the audience. So heading back into, I'll show this inside of After Effects. I'll actually select a shot here where one of the first things that we looked at was the effects editor inside of Continuum. So on any effect, say we apply atmospheric glow right now. I'll do a search for BCC plus. And under the film style category, apply atmospheric glow. Keep in mind that in the effects editor, there's a gateway to a number of presets that you can use, but this is also the gateway for you to save your own presets. And these presets travel cross-platform. So even if you find an effect that you like that might be suitable for the footage that you're working on, you might want to take some of those properties or parameters that you'll see over here on the right-hand side, adjust them, and by clicking on that list icon, saving your own preset, which is a lightweight XML file that will travel cross-platform. So that's one thing we can take advantage of the effects editor inside of Continuum. The other, in both Continuum and Sapphire, is your ability to import Mocha masks. So at any point in time in your workflow, by heading inside of Mocha that's built inside of Continuum and Sapphire, we can go to the File menu and open a project. By opening a project, we have access to all of the Mocha masks. And again, we can also export our own Mocha projects to open inside of another host, such as Final Cut or DaVinci Resolve, and use it on a different effect. I'll go here, right back inside of After Effects, where you'll see that now this glow is isolated to the deer. And like we did earlier, under Pixel Chooser, you can view the matte mask. And under Mask Settings, invert this mask so it's only affecting the background. The next two things involved Sapphire workflows in particular, and one was the ability to use color fuse and how we can fuse 3 lookup tables together and decide on the various mixes and the overall effect that we'll have on our shot. The cool part is inside of Premiere Pro, as well as After Effects in this case, you can use the Lumetri color panel in order to export LUTs from there and then have access to that in Color Fuse, where you could literally save a preset of 3 lookup tables, not to mention mix values at once. And last but not least, we saw, which I again think is the ultimate collaboration tool in Sapphire, which is S-Effect. S-Effect allows you to define a user experience. And in the 2 examples that we explored here, there's a lot more that you can take advantage of inside of Builder. Just keep in mind, if you go inside here and load a preset, and we go to Builder Effects, several of these animated backgrounds and looks are containing multiple Sapphire effects. And when you load them and you take a closer look at them, you'll see that the effects or parameters that you see inside of the host are not equivalent to the amount that is associated with that, like all the effects that this Builder effect is made of. And the cool part is, at any point in time, with any of these presets, you have access to edit the effect, which is going to bring you inside of the Builder, and you can deconstruct how the various components were added and which properties were used to define the user experience. And with that information, you can take it and start to build your own effects from scratch by applying S-Effect to a clip, followed by going inside of Builder, adding those components, choosing which parameters to bring over, and also if you wanted to have animation. So that is it for this week's office hours. I'm just going to head back here and share my full camera again. If anyone has any questions about this, feel free to leave a comment here on social or reach out to me after the effects. But I wanted to wish everyone here from us at Boris FX happy holidays and happy new year. And thanks so much for tuning in. Couldn't have done it without you. I hope everyone has a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you. Bye-bye.